It's not a question of what is the future of music, but I think for music to continue to survive in its complexity is through family.
It will connect, it will always connect people.
Hi everyone, my name is Derrick Gee. We are at the Elbphilharmonie and I'm really excited to bring you a conversation that has come about by the way of myself speaking to the team at Elbphilharmonie about wanting to speak about music and specifically the future of music. Now that is such a broad term, it's very difficult to pin down. You could talk about anything very easily. You could just jump to AI and be like, is it going to destroy us all? And I don't think that's the point. And when we talked about it, I thought, how can we address this question in a different way that might kind of unite some thoughts, maybe find common ground, maybe find a way that there are parallels between times, generations, eras, experiences, technologies. And so I said, why don't we speak to people of different generations and speak to their current experience, their lived experience, their experience from the past up until right now. So maybe we can learn a little bit about how our lives have lived and experienced music up until now and how that might dictate where things might go in the future, maybe. I talk about music personally as time travel. Not only can you transport yourself to places you've never been before, but also it's timestamps in your life.
It is.
Where you can say, that song, I was there doing that thing.
Yeah.
Annika, for yourself, how does I think what I like about speaking to someone younger is you're very much in what I would consider more of the prime music consumption times of your life. And you might not necessarily notice that, realize that, be cognizant of it, you don't need to be. But what does music mean to you now?
What does it mean to me now? I think it's always been a very essential part of my life. I used to have a radio in my room and it was always on 24/7, and my parents, it would drive them crazy. They would be like, why are you listening to this? Because of course there was also advertisement and stuff like that in between. But for me it was just something that, I don't know, kept me going always, I guess. And then at some point my dad, which is kind of, I guess, what you're playing at a little bit also, got a Spotify family account.
Oh.
Yeah, for Christmas. And yeah, that was very exciting because, well, I'm not gonna reveal too much, but I found some other ways to listen to music.
Guilty of that.
Beforehand. And so that was, yeah, I guess a moment where all of a sudden I had access to whatever I wanted to listen to. And I think my relationship, or what music means to me, has changed in a way. I mean, it's still very, like, not in a way that it's not essential to me anymore or important to me anymore. But I remember I used to just stack a lot of songs in my playlists. Like I'm collecting something to have it. And I think that was kind of in the beginning because it was different. I wasn't used to that, because beforehand I was just on the radio, and so I couldn't really capture it. And now it's so different. Like, I mean, just with Instagram and everything and TikTok, of course, like the music industry has completely changed. But I think I've gotten more conscious of that. And yeah, I can definitely relate to the kind of time travel thing and the memory thing. And I try to make a point. I mean, of course, I also listen to music when I'm like on a bus ride or something like that, but I try to make a point in also actively listening to music in a way. I think that's like gotten more and more important to me.
A couple of things that I thought were really interesting that you said is like how aware you were of how, you know, technology has changed and your consumption has changed. And the thing I loved the most was the family Spotify account for Christmas.
Yeah.
I thought that was really lovely. And I guess, Darlene, I wanted to ask about, you have a grandchild, right? One?
Yes.
One grandchild.
3 years old.
3, lovely. And how, in 2024, sharing music and the gift of sharing music comes in the form of, let's get a subscription for everyone so that we can enjoy infinite music and without ads and such. When you were raising your kids and maybe had you know, around Annika's age or whatever, how did you share music with your family?
At the beginning in Norway, we were singing all the time, yes. And brass band, and my grandma had a piano. And yeah, I tried to find some melodies, and she gave me the possibility to have a teacher. You know, and my life was music from the beginning.
How about singing for anyone to the table?
Singing is important too.
I personally don't find singing is that present in my life outside of happy birthday. And it's not bad. And concerts, but I don't necessarily consider that singing. Is singing as a community, does anyone experience that?
Well, I'm singing in a church choir,
Oh,
actually,
really?
as a bass.
When did you start doing that?
That I started like 3 years ago.
Why?
Only. Why? Because I found it a different way of both connecting to my neighborhood, connecting with the people, making neighbors coming closer to each other. Actually, the whole thing started when I took some singing lessons when I was younger, let's say around 30 years old. I'm playing the piano since I'm 9, so I had piano lessons, and eventually I started to improvise on music which I would hear on radio or CDs and listen tape and write down notes, and then eventually start singing to it. And that is somehow carrying me away in normal life. I can just sit down at the on the piano for, let's say, 2 hours and just play, or more actively sing to it as well. And then, of course, it becomes not as carrying away, but to those musicians which I adore the most, I try, like Elton John. He had a big influence on me when I was younger. I started my first ballads on the piano by starting with Your Song or I'm Still Standing, all those things. And so it's all different kinds of music. And when being at the first concerts, I really started to have a complete different glimpse of that as well, and improvising on the music also differently.
I think it's interesting how we went from, you know, singing to choirs to concerts, and I think I've thought about myself about how compelling the idea of choirs are, because it's something that is more uncommon these days. Like, I don't know, Annika, if what do you have any opinions on, like, a collective singing experience?
Well, I mean, it's nice to listen to, for sure, definitely. I've never been in like a church choir or anything. I have friends that I sing with.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Where?
Just usually when we're trying to procrastinate on studying, it's just we'll decide to do karaoke instead.
What do you sing?
What do we sing? I think the last song we sung was from Paramore. I'm not sure. What's it
Like
called?
Misery Business or something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. But it's actually fun because you said Elton John, I'm Still Standing, and
I
my
heard
brother.
a little chuckle when...
Yeah, my brother used to play that when he started learning the piano, and he played it every day. And at some point I got annoyed, but I started to sing along. So I was just thinking that that's fun. It's like a similar experience. But I think that singing together is like at a concert, but even in like just a context of people singing together, there's this event, it's called Hamburg Singt, and Hamburg is singing. And we went there a couple times as a family, and it's really cool when the music kind of cuts out and you just hear everybody singing. It's just such a connecting, collective experience. And
was that the thing at the Stadtpark last year?
It might have been there as well. I went
Okay.
there, I think, I'm not even sure. I think it was Leishalle,
Okay.
I think, at some point. It was like a year ago or
Sounds
something like that.
amazing.
Yeah. And then, yeah, just with individuals, my boyfriend also.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You make me think about, like, I thought when I asked you this question that like, oh, maybe singing in choirs are not something that happens as much anymore. But then you mentioned karaoke, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
karaoke is singing together. You know, it's not necessarily, it's a different name to a choir. One thing I've been intrigued by, especially, you know, you being much younger than the rest of us at the table, is around you kind of generalizing, have mostly had access to most of recorded music history from a lot of your life
Yes.
because of streaming.
Yeah.
What is your relationship like with that concept? Or I guess because it's more normalized for you as opposed to us buying records, CDs, cassettes,
Yeah.
what have you, does the infinity of it all, is it overwhelming, or is it just like the internet, it's just part of life and it doesn't bother you?
Well, I think in a paradox way, both, because it is normal. Like, it is part of my everyday life in a way, of course, but it doesn't ever stop being infinite in a way. So I think it's definitely weird because I have access to more music, but I still, like, every 2 weeks I'm like, oh, I'm listening to the same songs over and over again. But then it's just like what I like right now.
On Spotify, for instance, we also have a family account, so I always exchange with my girls as well. So they give me what the younger generation likes, and I pass on to them what I think they hear what I'm listening to, and then this kind of puts the whole thing in, well, at least in 2 generations together. But it's more about streaming, and you put together a collection, Spotify list. And also
That's
at
lovely.
some spot you're always changing and modifying it, but in the end you have some favorites, and you play them over and over, and then you start creating something new again, which used to be like buying a new LP or a new CD back then in the 90s, and now you just put together a new playlist and hope that you will not get annoyed in 2-3 weeks or so on, or months.
And perhaps that's something that will always exist or persist, is I think all of you guys have mentioned about family and grandmother's records, or from your dad or your kids, and sharing playlists or singing amongst family. This idea of maybe it's not a question of what is the future of music, but I think for music to continue to survive in its complexity is through family.
It will connect, it will always connect people. If it's family or if it's friends or whatever, it will always connect. And what I like about music is the factor that you usually have an image on mind when you're listening to certain songs, which you connect to some kind of experience which you made in life. For instance, I'm using a lot when I'm putting together, let's say, home videos from our vacation. I edit that, I add music, a soundtrack to it, and then suddenly, whenever we hear something on the radio playing, I said, oh, you remember where we were at that time? Yeah, we were driving through France and being in the Bretagne, and I said,
Beautiful.
Exactly, that's the image I'm having. And so there's a lot of imagination, connection of thoughts, and of course remembering the times which we were partying with our friends when we were 18 years, and which is a bit further away
Yeah.
from my age, and
It's further and further away. Was there Was there a time where, I know when we talk about the future, I think we can't help but talk about technology, because that's one thing that always changes and evolves much faster than a lot of things. Was there a time where you felt like technology changed your experience of music?
No, I don't like technology.
No. Fair. Fair enough.
Sorry. We have a little cottage in Norway, and I was there 3 weeks in summer without music.
Without electricity?
Yeah. In summer it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not in winter.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful.
But even with no radio? I mean, you didn't have any technology to give you any
3 weeks
music?
without music.
Without
I have some books, and there's music from Skravin, also written music, and the nature and the sea, and the was heißt Wald?
Forest?
Forest, yes. 3 weeks with no person, my family not, to cool down, because I feel very...
That is the complete opposite to your 24/7 music, isn't
Well,
it?
I was just about to ask, how does that sound to you?
Well, actually, I try to consume music actively, of course, what I just said. I mean, I don't have TikTok. I have a very strict time limit on Instagram. I do like it, but I have a time limit. And just because I think it makes a difference in how you perceive things day to day, every day. And so recently I've been trying to also listen to less podcasts, less music, so also just be in silence more, just because I realize I can't hear my own thoughts sometimes. And
Do you find that at its extremes, you're just consuming all the time?
yeah, I mean, I think I'm conscious of it. I think that, like, because it is something that's important to me to be present, I think I am more conscious of it. But definitely, I think, I mean, especially my generation, but everybody who uses technology probably has that moment when, like, after 3 hours, you're like, oh.
Yeah, I feel like perhaps part of the evolving future of music, if we don't go down the dark path of the machines taking over everything, is that perhaps the transparency and accountability and tools to help support artists financially, like you're nodding quite affirmatively that it feels like it's something that you care about, that perhaps technology can solve, that's perhaps broken at the moment. Does anyone feel, I do sometimes feel guilty for streaming.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I get that. I feel like I don't have it so much with big artists, because you said about giving something back for something that they have worked hard for, and yes, of course, but I mean, I guess big artists also did that, but now I feel like, okay, they're well set, they don't need that. I think it's especially with small artists, and I definitely wasn't always conscious of that. Of course, I didn't copy CDs, but I had Convert MP3 and stuff like that, so I'm definitely guilty of that as well. But then even now with streaming, now that I'm a little bit older and that I also know people that do music, I think I definitely had some conversations with friends and people that I know. It's like, yeah, well, you don't really get much from a lot of streaming platforms, and it doesn't necessarily pay off. So I get that with feeling guilty for streaming in a way, yeah.
It feels like the optimist could say that, the next generation of technology will solve these problems.
Mm-hmm. Let's hope.
The likelihood is probably, as I'm learning from this discussion, is that perhaps the economics of all of it are going to change, and that perhaps in a sad way, earning money as an artist in the future might not be a realistic, it's not a realistic expectation now, but even further in the future, it might be you don't do this to think you're going to make any money out of it.
That is unfortunate.
Did you say your boyfriend's a musician?
Yeah, my boyfriend's a musician, and I'm also very artistic, I guess. I would say I'm definitely more oriented in that direction. So something I think about a lot. But what I always find kind of hopeful is, I learned this in arts class, and it is that when photography was invented, people thought everything was going to be over. Art has lost all meaning, and it's only then when people actually kind of started to depict things that aren't necessarily the reality, and kind of went above and beyond and started trying out new things. So I kind of always try to like lay back on, okay, well, humans kind of always have a way of inventing something new or finding something that is inherently human when technology or innovation kind of seems to take over at first. And so I try to find hope in that. I'm very curious what will happen now, because I think something will happen. And I'm hoping that somehow that can maybe somehow support artists in a way. But of course, it's also possible that it's just going to be harder and harder for artists. But I hope that somehow with the evolving technology, it's going to be somehow a support system, maybe more, and there's going to be human innovations, not in a technology way, but what we're going to do instead, or not instead, but add on, I guess.
It feels like, having heard all of your experiences, that, and I liked your example of photography, where there is concern that things are getting worse and things will always be worse, but it almost feels like, I personally can lean too much towards technology and how that will impact things and how that will change things and how that will either save things or ruin things. I don't think that that's the answer from this today at all. It feels like, which is kind of the nice thing about the purpose of this conversation, is that it is human and inherently human, and that the future of music, I feel like, will bounce between people enjoying and sharing live music together, being with each other, being with community and sharing those experiences, families coming together. There's those that think about the environmental impacts and how we can lessen that, and how we can be conscious, and not only in the environmental impacts, but the technology impact of it too, that we're conscious of how to be more present, which is what you said as well. Like, I think one can often look at all the developments in the how this information is presented to us, and forget that it's all about us.
Yeah. we write our own future. Actually, we do. But also, see, if I'm just bringing up or taking up the photography thing, of course, everybody taking his phone to take pictures, and partly also replacing a photo shoot by taking your own pictures. I mean, this is making kind of, out of everyone, a kind of small half or semi-professional photographer. I don't know how this may continue in music business. Maybe it becomes much easier in future to be a little composer yourself, and you have so much more uploads by different kind of musicians who just from their own living room or from their own band room stream or source the internet or put something into the internet and make music available much quicker than it is possible today. Let's not look into future too negatively, but I think there's always some kind of development also in this kind of musical progress. There will be different sides to it,
and perhaps there's another perspective that maybe if everyone becomes a musician, then we search for the good songs and we just want to sing those as well. Because I went to a event that was held by the Elbphilharmonie that was about playing music at an elderly home. And they were singing these songs that I knew, that they knew, and it made me think, like, I feel like there are certain songs that are always going to exist.
The evergreens. It's kind of, well, in the end, it could be evergreens, but especially with the elderly people, which you play somewhere, were also people who are having a kind of affected mind or kind of disease, where they cannot remember the daily words, whatever.
Yes.
But if you play music to them, they will be able to sing along.
Yeah, the melodies, the songs.
Melodies. So it's all about connection, interaction, communication, and being carried away. So the people you cannot reach by your words anymore, they may be able to be reached by music still.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that this human part of music, I feel like there's always this consumption that for my generation it's like just more consumption and stuff like that, but I do feel like that is something that at least I hope is going to gain importance again. And like with the music for elderly people and people with dementia even and stuff like that. And also looking into the future of live music and all of that. I do think that is something that people feel, like just this connection that music has. And I think that also people now realize, I think that's also the reason why people maybe tend to also listen to older music, because it's just different than listening to a song that maybe has the perfect chorus that fits into TikTok, which I'm not saying that's bad necessarily, I'm just saying it's different. And I'm kind of hoping that maybe somehow out of all of this, I mean, of course, there's dystopian views, and I'm not saying that everything's going to be great, but maybe to be able to differentiate between that feeling that music has for people, for humans, that is inherently something human, and then everything that's around it, which of course is also a big part of it, but maybe that can gain importance again in a way.
Well, I think that we've touched on a lot of different things today, and I thank you all for your time. I think it's quite nourishing to hear all your perspectives, because I think that there is more commonality than anything in how we experience music, and I don't think we're that different across the generations. And sure, I could say that was the goal, but who knows? But I think that, like I said, the themes of humanity and community and family and environment are like, wow, these are like real exciting things. And that's not the exciting things of like, wow, is AI going to make the perfect song? This is like, I want that life.
Yeah.
I want that world where I can sing in a choir with friends, or if that choir is, that term is karaoke or whatever. And I want to make sure that I think about the art, and I care for it, and I spend time and I share it with different people. So, to conclude, hopefully you've enjoyed this discussion. Hopefully you've gotten something out of it. Hopefully you've become not pessimistic, but more optimistic for the future of music. And I wonder, perhaps we'll all be in our retirement homes one day singing the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Hopefully.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.